The next sutta is 3.11.105. Now Anatta Pindika, the house father, came to see the Exalted One. On coming to him, he saluted the Exalted One and sat down at one side. As he thus sat, the Exalted One said this to him: House father, when the thought, citta, is unguarded, bodily action also is unguarded. Speech and mental action also are unguarded. In him whose bodily action, speech and mental action are unguarded, they are saturated with lust. When these are thus saturated with lust, they are rotten. When they are rotten, one's death is not auspicious. One has no happy ending. Now, house father, just as when a peaked house is unthatched, the peak is not protected, the roof beams are not protected, the wall is not protected. The peak, roof beams and walls are saturated, they are rotten. Just so, when thought is unguarded, bodily action is unguarded, speech and mental action also are unguarded. In him whose bodily action, speech and mental action are unguarded, they are saturated with lust. When these are thus saturated with lust, they are rotten. When they are rotten, one's death is not auspicious. One has no happy ending. And then vice versa, similarly for the converse. In this sutta, the Buddha is saying, when the thought or citta is unguarded, and the three karmas, the bodily karma, the speech and mental karma are unguarded, they are saturated with lust. And this, as I was saying just now, that in the earlier sutta, that the thought, citta, is different from the mental karma. The mental karma is mano karma. The thought, citta, is just a thought, just not a volition, it's not intention. Like in the Dhammapada, verse number 1, the Buddha says, mind is the forerunner of all evil states, mind is chief, mind-made are they. If one speaks or acts with a wicked mind, because of that suffering follows one, even as the wheel follows the hoof of the dwarf ox. This is the thought, the citta, before we act through the body, speech or thought, we think first. So that's why the mind and the thinking is very important. And so if we are trying to practice a spiritual life, we must always guard our mind. We don't listen to our mind. Whatever happens in our mind, we try to remain indifferent, remain equanimous, just like an observer. We know that the mind is impermanent. However it wants to react, and sometimes it can react quite strongly. We just try to remain calm and equanimous and just observe it. The next sutta is 3.11.109. The Buddha said, monks, there are these three causes of the origin of actions. What three? Desire is generated for things in the past based on desire, for the like things in the future, as well as things of the present time based on desire. And how, monks, is this desire generated for things in the past? One remembers and turns over in his mind thoughts about things based on desire in the past. As he does so, desire is generated. Becoming desirous, he is fettered by those things. I call this a fetter, monks, that heart full of lust. That is how desire is generated for things in the past based on desire. And how, monks, is this desire generated for like things in the future? One thinks about and turns over in his mind the thoughts of things based on desire in the future. As he does so, desire is generated, etc. And how, monks, is this desire generated in the present? One thinks about things in the present based on desire. As he does so, desire is generated. Becoming desirous, he is fettered by those things. I call this a fetter, monks, that heart full of lust. That is how desire is generated for things in the present based upon desire. These, monks, are the three causes of the origin of actions. And this is a sutta. Here the Buddha is saying that because of thinking, remembering, for example, the things in the past, thoughts about things in the past which gave us pleasure, which gave us happiness, and then thinking about it, desire is generated again for those things in the past. And similarly for future things, based on our past experience of happiness and pleasure, we project into the future that we want to experience those things again in the future. And also in the present, if we see something or we hear something which reminds us of the pleasure that we had experienced before, then again the desire arises immediately in the present. So it is the thinking that causes the desire, and the desire leads to craving and actions, and that will cause the rebirth. Now the next sutta is also connected with this. The next sutta is 3.11.110. The Buddha said, "Monks, there are these three causes which prevent the arising of actions." What three? Desire for things in the past based on desire is not generated. Desire for the like things in the future as well as at the present time is not generated. And how, monks, is desire for things in the past based on desire not generated? One fully understands the future result of things which in the past were based on desire. Foreseeing this result, one turns away from it, and so doing, conceiving no desire for it in the heart, one penetrates it by insight and sees it plain. That is how desire is not generated. And how, monks, is desire for things in the future not generated? One fully understands the future result of things yet to come which are based on desire. Foreseeing this result, etc., etc. And how, monks, is desire for things in the present which are based on desire not generated? One fully understands the future result of present things based on desire. Foreseeing this result, one turns away from it, and so doing, conceiving no desire for it in the heart, one penetrates it by insight and sees it plain. That is how desire for things of the present which are based on desire is not generated. These are the three causes which prevent the arising of actions. And this sutta has something to do with the previous sutta, and it's saying that when we think about the future results of things based on desire, then we can see that they bring us dukkha. So this is basically like a vipassana practice, a contemplation practice. We think about those things that initially we think is going to, that most people want, most people desire for. When we contemplate, then we realize that these things they give us pain. If we obtain the things, we cannot be contented. We cannot be really contented, only very temporarily. And if we don't obtain those things, then we get a lot of suffering. So then we realize it's better to let go of our desires. So whether it's future or the present things, we decide to let go of them because thinking of them, contemplating, we know that they bring us pain. So that is the basis of non-action. Now, then, just like to mention a sutta, the Digha Nikaya number 21, called the Sakka Panha Sutta. That sutta actually, although it's concerning Sakadeva Raja, there's a very important principle in that sutta, and I'd like to just go through the gist of it. In that sutta, Sakadeva Raja asked the Buddha, he said, in this world, beings generally like to live in peace, like to live in harmony. Yet, even though they want to live in peace and harmony, there's a lot of hostility, malice, hatred, enmity, fighting, quarrel, etc. among living beings. And asked the Buddha why this is so. Then the Buddha said, it's because of covetousness and jealousy, or you can say greed and jealousy. And then Sakadeva Raja agreed. Then he asked, what is the cause of this greed and jealousy? And then the Buddha said, like and dislike, our discriminating mind. like and dislike. And then again, Sakadevaraja asked, what is the cause of like and dislike? And the Buddha said, desire. And what is the cause of desire? Thinking. What is the cause of thinking? The tendency to proliferation of thoughts in our mind. And then the Buddha said, to stop the tendency for proliferation of thoughts in the mind, we have to realize that there are two kinds of happiness. The Buddha said two kinds of happiness. One is the happiness that we get from thinking. The second one is the happiness which is devoid of thinking. So unless we can attain the happiness which is devoid of thinking, we cannot let go of the happiness due to thinking. So the happiness which is devoid of thinking is basically the jhanas, the one-pointedness of mind, that deep concentration that is attained. Then only we can let go of the tendency to the proliferation of thoughts. And then we can let go of thinking, we can let go of desire, we can let go of like and dislike, and finally let go of greed and jealousy. And so that is a very important principle. So basically, you see, like we in the previous sutta, we remember that desire is generated because we think. So we have to stop the thinking, that is from cultivating our mind until it learns to be at peace, to realize that peace and happiness is obtainable from within us, not in outside things, not in worldly things, because worldly things, the Buddha said, are not to be indulged in. If we indulge in worldly things, in sensual pleasures, things of the six senses, then they will give us pain eventually. But if we indulge in our own mind, what is within us, that is not dependent on outside of us, then the Buddha said that is allowable. Why so? Because the Buddha said it results in four things. Attaining of the four fruitions, Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahanthood. That was stated by the Buddha in the Digha Nikaya. So, you see, meditation, initially, we have to use our contemplating mind, the vipassana part, but eventually we have to come to a state when we have to let go of the thinking, and that is that only we can get that from the samatha practice. That's why in one sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, Venerable Ananda said there's only four ways to attaining arahanthood. One is we practice samatha first, followed by vipassana. The second one is vipassana first, followed by samatha. The third one is samatha and vipassana together. The fourth one is contemplating on the self until the mind becomes one-pointed. Then he will know the way for himself. So the next sutta is 3.12.111. The Buddha said, monks, these three persons are doomed to the downfall, to hell, unless they abandon this habit. Which three? He who, living impurely, claims to live the holy life. He who falsely charges with immorality one who is living the pure holy life, the utterly pure holy life. 3. He who, preaching and holding the view that there is no fault in sensuality, comes to be intoxicated with his lusts. These are the three who are doomed to the downfall, to hell, unless they abandon this habit. This sutta is saying that firstly, a monk who claims to be a monk, but he is actually a very corrupt person, and he breaks the major precepts, which there are four major precepts, the parajikas, which a monk is not allowed to break. If a monk breaks any of these four precepts, the parajikas, he is no more a monk. The Buddha said, even though he wears the robe. First one is he engages in sexual intercourse. The second one is he steals something valuable. That means something like more than 50 Malaysian ringgit or $20. And then the third one is he kills a human being, or encourages somebody to kill a human being, even to the extent of encouraging a woman to have an abortion. And the fourth one is he does not have supernormal attainment. He claims to have supernormal attainment. And then These are the 4 ways of breaking the major precepts. So if a monk breaks any one of these, that means he is basically impure, but he tries to put a front that he is a pure monk, then he is liable to go down to hell for it. The second one is a person, that means generally a lay person who is angry of a monk, and he makes a charge that the monk is immoral, that the monk is impure, when in fact the monk is a good monk. Then that person is liable to go down to hell. So it's very dangerous for a person to develop hatred for a monk. Sometimes a monk preaches some teaching, and some people, because of their bias, because of their prejudice, because of the way they have been taught, they think that the monk has a wrong view or something. They develop a lot of hatred for the monk. That's very dangerous, because one day he might come to know that the monk is actually preaching the right teachings, then it's a great loss to him. Third one is a person who teaches that there is no fault in sensual pleasures, and he indulges in sensual pleasures, and he's liable to go down to hell also for it. This is particularly true during the Buddha's time of certain wondrous ascetics, because during the Buddha's time there were a lot of ascetics who practiced the nakedness. So you had men naked ascetics, and you had women naked ascetics, and sometimes because their minds are not developed, they look at each other, and then lust develops in their mind, and then they engage in sexual conduct, and they say there's nothing wrong with it because they don't harm anybody. But the problem is they don't harm anybody, they harm themselves. So these are the 3 things. Now the next sutta is 3.12.112. The Buddha said, monks, the appearance of 3 persons is hard to find in the world. What 3? The appearance of a Tathagata, an Arahant who is fully enlightened, is hard to find in the world. Secondly, the appearance of a person who can expound the Dhamma Vinaya taught by the Tathagata. And the third one is a person who is mindful and grateful, is hard to be found in the world. These are the 3 persons hard to find in the world. And this is also another quite interesting sutta. The first one is Sama Sambuddha, is hard to find in the world. That we quite realize. Like in one sutta, the Buddha said he looked into the past 91 world cycles and he found only 6 Buddhas. In our suttas, the Buddha only mentions 6 Buddhas, 6 past Buddhas. It's only later books who talk about 24 Buddhas and 28 Buddhas and all that, but actually on our original suttas, the Buddha only mentioned 6 Buddhas. He only saw 6 Buddhas in the past, and that was by looking over a long period of 91 world cycles. Then the second one is an interesting one, is that a person who can teach the Dhamma Vinaya, that means the teachings of the Buddha, who can teach correctly the teachings of the Buddha, is very hard to find in the world. There are a lot of people who teach who teach, but they might not teach correctly the teachings of the Buddha. That is why it is very important to take the original discourses of the Buddha as our guide. We stick by the original teachings of the Buddha because we find that there is no contradiction in them. Whereas in other books, you can find a lot of contradiction. So we stick to the original teachings, the original discourses of the Buddha, and then that is the right Dhamma. So here the Buddha is saying is to find somebody who can teach exactly or similar to the original teachings of the Buddha is not easy to find. The third one, a person who is grateful. In this world, most people are ungrateful. To find somebody who is grateful is very rare. Now the next sutta is on 3.12.113. The Buddha said, monks, these 3 sorts of persons are hard to be found in the world. What 3? He who is easily measured, he who is hardly measured, he who is immeasurable. And of what sort, monks, is he who is easily measured? Herein a certain person is frivolous, empty-headed, a busybody, of harsh speech, loose in talk, lacking concentration, unsteady, not composed, of flighty mind, with senses uncontrolled. This one is called easily measured. And of what sort, monks, is the person who is hardly measured? In this case, a certain person is not frivolous, not empty-headed, no busybody, not of harsh speech, not loose in talk, but concentrated, steady, composed, of one pointed mind, with senses well controlled. This one is called hardly measured. And of what sort, monks, is the person who is immeasurable? In this case, we have a monk in whom the asavas are destroyed. This one is called immeasurable. These are the three sorts of person found to exist in the world. So this sutta is talking about the person whose mind is not developed. And the second one, whose mind is developed. Then the third one is the arahant, whose mind is perfectly developed. And the next sutta is 3.12.114. The Buddha said, monks, these three sorts of persons are found to exist in the world. What three? Herein, monks, a certain person, by utterly transcending consciousness of form, by the disappearance of consciousness of resistance, by paying no heed to the diversity of consciousness regarding space as infinite, reaches up to and abides in the sphere of infinite space. He enjoys it, longs for it, and finds happiness therein. Established therein, given thereto, generally spending his time therein, and not falling away therefrom. When he makes an end, he is reborn in the company of the devas who have reached the sphere of infinite space. Now monks, the life of those devas is 20,000 world cycles. Therein the ordinary man stays and spends his lifetime according to the lifespan of those devas. When he goes to hell, or to the womb of an animal, or to the realm of ghosts. But a disciple of the Exalted One, after staying there and spending his lifetime according to the lifespan of those devas, finally passes away in that very state. Such monks is the distinction, the specific feature, the difference between the educated Aryan disciple and the uneducated ordinary man in the matter of destiny and rebirth. Again, monks, here we have a certain person who, by utterly transcending the sphere of infinite space, regarding consciousness as infinite, reaches up to and abides in the sphere of infinite consciousness. He enjoys it, longs for it, and finds happiness therein. Established therein, given thereto, generally spending his time therein and not falling away therefrom. When he makes an end, he is reborn in the company of the devas who have reached the sphere of infinite consciousness. Now monks, the life of those devas is 40,000 world cycles. Therein the ordinary man stays and spends his time according to the lifespan of those devas. Then he goes to hell, or the animal realm, or the ghost realm, as before. Again, monks, we have a certain person who, by utterly transcending the sphere of infinite consciousness with the idea of nothing exists, reaches up to and abides in the sphere of nothingness. He enjoys it. When he makes an end, he is reborn in the company of those devas. Now the lifespan of those devas is 60,000 world cycles. Therein the ordinary man stays. Then he goes to hell, or the womb of an animal, or to the realm of ghosts. But the disciple of the Exalted One finally passes away in that very state. Such monks is the distinction, the specific feature, the difference between the educated Aryan disciple and the uneducated ordinary man in the matter of destiny and rebirth. These monks are the three sorts of person found existing in the world. Here the Buddha is talking about the persons who can attain the arupa jhanas, the states of mental incandescence. And the lifetimes of the devas mentioned here is like 20,000 kappa, 20,000 world cycles, or 20,000 aeons. And then the other one is 40,000, the other one is 60,000. This is in the suttas, and also I think in the Abhidhamma. But if you look into the commentary, they talk about 20,000 asankhya kappas, which is a mistake. That's a problem with the commentary. Sometimes you get contradictions and discrepancies. They talk about 20,000 asankheya kappas. Asankheya means countless. Countless. So this seems to be a mistake. And here you see that those people who attain the jhanas and they abide in these jhanas and long for it and spends a lot of time in these jhanas, when they pass away, they are born into those realms of jhana, the jhana realms. But there's a difference, two types of persons. One is a person like those external ascetics who do not know the Dhamma, and then they have not attained the stages of Aryahood. So because they have not attained the stages of Aryahood, after they pass away from the Deva planes, they fall down to the lower realms, to the woeful planes. It's possible for them to fall to the woeful planes. Maybe not immediately, but they might take a few steps and fall into the woeful planes eventually. But the disciples of the Buddha do not do so, because disciples of the Buddha are called savakas. Savakas are listeners. People like you are savakas. They listen to the suttas. So because you listen to the suttas, and when you understand the suttas, then even when you reach the planes of jhana, you don't fall back into the woeful planes, because you have transcended any Arya. All the Aryas are never reborn into the woeful planes. You'll never go down to the woeful planes. At the lowest you'll go is the human realm. Come back to the human realm, like the Sotapanna and the Sakadagami, and after that they get out of the samsara. So sometimes people, out of prejudice, they like to say that, what's the point of cultivating jhana? After you attain jhana, you come down to the woeful planes again. But this is only true of external ascetics who do not know the Dhamma. Those of us who know the Dhamma, even if we have attained the jhanas, which means our mind is very clear, and combined with the knowledge of the suttas, the knowledge of the Dhamma Vinaya, then it's not likely that we will fall into the woeful planes.